Our family home was a modest 2-story building tucked away on Elm Street. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I lived there with my younger brother Mike, and it was filled with memories of our parents who had long passed away. I often found myself reflecting on those earlier days when it was the 4 of us laughing around the dinner table. After their passing, Mike and I held each other up, leaning on one another for support. Our relationship was more than that of siblings. We were each other's confidants, best friends. I worked at a large company downtown, and Mike was pursuing his studies at the local college. Our evenings often consisted of shared meals and long conversations. It was a simple life, but we were content. One evening, while preparing dinner, Mike enthusiastically told me about his plans for the weekend. "Jane, you should come with me to the game on Saturday," he urged, his eyes twinkling. I smiled, stirring the sauce. "You know, sports aren't my thing, but I'll be cheering you on from here." He laughed, coming over to taste the sauce. Delicious as always. Seriously though, you need to get out more. Have some fun." "I have plenty of fun with you and my books," I replied, giving him a playful nudge. He wrapped his arms around me in a warm hug. "I just want you to be happy, sis." "I am happy, Mike," I assured him, feeling a pang of gratitude for having him in my life. "As long as we have each other, I'm happy." We continued our dinner, chatting about everything from his classes to my work, our dreams, and our future. Those were the moments I cherished the most. The connection we shared felt unbreakable, sacred even. I believed nothing could come between us. As the months went on, we settled into our routines, comfortable in our shared existence. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and our quiet life was about to be disrupted. Little did I know that a chance encounter at a cafe downtown would change everything. Mike was about to meet Sarah, and our lives would never be the same again. That night, I noticed a spark in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He talked about the amazing girl he'd met, his words filled with excitement and anticipation. I listened, happy for him but also sensing that a chapter in our lives was closing. The balance was shifting, and I felt a strange twinge in my gut. But I pushed it aside, choosing to be supportive. After all, family sticks together, and nothing could ever change that. Or so I thought. The news of Mike's newfound love interest didn't surprise me. He was a charming young man, full of life and charisma. But as the weeks went by, his relationship with Sarah blossomed at a speed that left me feeling uneasy. One evening, he brought her home for dinner. I wanted to make a good impression, so I prepared a special meal and dressed up a bit. After all, this was a significant moment in my brother's life. Sarah was attractive, with striking eyes and a confident smile. Her laughter filled our dining room, and she seemed to command attention effortlessly. Mike was clearly smitten. "Dinner is fantastic, Jane," Sarah complimented, looking at me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must spend a lot of time in the kitchen." I forced a smile, feeling the sting of her veiled insult. "I enjoy cooking. It's a way for me to relax after work." "Oh, I could never waste my time on such things," she replied, glancing at Mike with a knowing look. "But it's charming that you do." Mike seemed oblivious to the barb and chimed in, "Jane's the best cook. We're lucky to have her." As the dinner wore on, Sarah's comments grew more pointed, each one a thinly veiled criticism of my life, my job, or my appearance. I tried to shrug them off, telling myself that she was nervous, trying to make her mark, but something in her demeanor told me otherwise. Mike was blind to it all, caught in the glow of new love. He laughed at her jokes, even when they were at my expense. His lack of awareness hurt, but I held my tongue, hoping that things would get better. They didn't. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah became a regular fixture in our lives. Her insults grew bolder, her jabs more frequent. Mike continued to defend her, often telling me that I was overreacting or that I needed to lighten up. "Come on, Jane," he'd say, trying to placate me after a particularly nasty remark from Sarah. "She's just teasing. You know how girls are." "But it's constant, Mike," I'd argue, frustration welling up. He'd shake his head, his expression filled with confusion. "You just need to get to know her better. You'll see she's a great person." But I didn't see it. All I saw was a woman who was driving a wedge between my brother and me, turning him against me with her words and her influence. I wasn't going to put up with it, but my attempts to talk to Mike were met with resistance. He was too wrapped up in his newfound love to see what was happening. Sarah's arrival had changed everything. Our once close, knit family was unraveling, and I felt a growing sense of dread. My brother was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I knew that I had to take a stand, but I was afraid of losing Mike. I was caught between my love for my brother and my growing resentment towards Sarah. The storm was brewing, and I could feel it in my bones. But I had no idea just how devastating it would be. Our lives were about to be changed forever, and there was no going back. The wedding was fast approaching, and the house was filled with the hustle and bustle of preparations. Sarah had become more brazen in her treatment of me, and Mike was more and more distant, wrapped up in the whirlwind of his new life. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The day before the wedding, everything changed. I had left work earlier than usual, feeling a strange urge to be home. The house was unusually quiet when I walked in, an eerie silence that set my nerves on edge. As I made my way upstairs, I heard it, a soft moan followed by a stifled giggle. My heart began to pound and a cold fear crept over me. The sounds were coming from Mike's room. I hesitated for a moment, torn between the need to know and the fear of what I might discover. Then, steeling myself, I walked to the door and opened it. The sight that met my eyes will forever be etched in my mind. Mike, lying on the bed with a girl I'd never seen before, a look of shock and guilt on his face. I felt my knees go weak, and a scream of disbelief caught in my throat. "Jane," Mike stammered, jumping up. "It's not what it looks like. Please, let me explain." "Explain," I yelled, tears of betrayal welling in my eyes. "Explain what, Mike? How could you do this to Sarah, to me?" "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," he pleaded, his face pale. "It was a mistake. It means nothing." "Nothing," I sobbed, my voice breaking. "How can you say that? How can you destroy everything like this?" "I'm so sorry, Jane," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "Please don't tell Sarah. Please. It'll ruin everything." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw desperation I'd never seen before. A part of me wanted to hurt him as he had hurt me, to tell Sarah and watch his world crumble. But another part, the part that loved him and remembered the bond we once shared, knew that I couldn't. "Promise me," he begged, grabbing my hands. "Promise me you won't tell her." I looked into his eyes, searching for the brother I once knew, and finally nodded. "I promise," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "But you've broken something, Mike, something that can never be repaired." I left the room, feeling a weight settle on my shoulders. The secret I now carried was a heavy one, and I knew that it would change everything. The wedding preparations continued, but I moved through them like a ghost, the joy and excitement replaced by a hollow emptiness. Sarah's taunts and jabs were like distant echoes, barely touching me. I had seen the truth, and it had changed everything. That night, as I lay in bed, the reality of what had happened settled in. My brother, my best friend, had betrayed not only his fiancée, but me. The trust we had built over the years was shattered, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I had made a promise, but it was a promise that came with a price that I was only just beginning to understand. The dark discovery had cast a shadow over our lives, and I knew that it would never truly go away. The wedding was tomorrow, and I was filled with a sense of dread. What had once been a celebration of love and joy had become a twisted masquerade, and I was trapped, caught in a web of lies and betrayal, with no way out. The dark discovery had changed everything, and there was no going back. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, but the beauty of the day was lost on me. I moved through the preparations in a daze, haunted by what I had discovered and burdened by the promise I had made to Mike. Sarah was in high spirits, her excitement palpable. She flitted from room to room, her laughter ringing through the house, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. "Jane, dear, do make sure the flowers are arranged just so," she commanded, her tone dripping with condescension. "We wouldn't want anything less than perfection, would we?" I bit back a sharp retort, forcing a smile. She flashed me a patronizing smile and moved on, leaving me to my thoughts. How could she not see the truth? How could she be so blind to the deceit and betrayal that lay beneath the surface of this so-called celebration? The ceremony was beautiful, filled with music and poetry, love and promises. But it all rang hollow to me. I watched as Mike and Sarah exchanged vows, their eyes locked, their words full of passion and conviction. And all I could think about was the lie that lay at the heart of it all. The reception followed, a grand affair with music, dancing, and endless toasts to the happy couple. Mike was the picture of joy, his guilt seemingly forgotten as he reveled in his new life. During a quiet moment, he pulled me aside, his eyes searching mine. "Thank you, Jane," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "Thank you for keeping my secret." I know it wasn't easy. I looked at him, my heart heavy. "You're my brother, Mike. I love you. But what you did was wrong. Don't ever forget that." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. And I'll make it up to you. I promise." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that we could move past this and find our way back to each other. But deep down, I knew that things would never be the same again. As the evening wore on, I found myself becoming more and more detached, watching the revelry with a sense of detachment. I felt like an outsider in my own life, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Finally, the night drew to a close, and the guests began to depart, leaving behind a trail of laughter and well wishes. I stood by the door, saying my goodbyes, feeling a growing sense of relief that the day was finally over. As the last guest left, Sarah turned to me, her eyes cold. "Well, Jane, I hope you enjoyed yourself. But remember, this is my home now, and things will be done my way." I met her gaze, my voice steady. "This is our home, Sarah. Mike's and mine, and I won't be pushed aside." She laughed, a cruel sound. "We'll see about that, dear sister-in-law. We'll see." I watched her walk away, a chill running down my spine. The battle lines were drawn, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The wedding was over, but the war had just begun. A war that would test the bonds of family, of love, of trust. A war that would reveal the true nature of the people I thought I knew. And I knew that I had to be ready. Ready to fight for what was right, for what was mine. Ready to face the darkness and emerge on the other side. The wedding had changed everything, and there was no turning back. The storm was coming, and I had to be ready to face it. Whatever the cost, life after the wedding became a daily struggle. Sarah's bullying escalated, her insults and taunts becoming more personal and vicious. Mike seemed oblivious to it all, lost in his own world, content to ignore the growing tension in the house. I tried to hold on to my patience, to rise above her cruelty, but it was wearing me down. Every day was a battle, a fight to maintain my dignity and self-respect. The home that had once been my sanctuary had become a battlefield, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. One day, Sarah's taunting reached a new level of malice. "Really, Jane, you must try harder with your appearance," she sneered as I entered the kitchen. "Your drab clothing and plain looks are becoming quite tiresome." I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. "I'm quite comfortable with who I am, Sarah, but thank you for your concern." "Oh, don't pretend you don't care," she shot back, her eyes narrowing. "You're just jealous of what I have with Mike. You're nothing but a burden to him." "That's enough, Sarah," I snapped, my anger finally boiling over. "I won't stand here and be insulted in my own home." "Your home," she laughed, her voice dripping with contempt. "This is my home now, and you're just a guest. A very unwelcome guest." Mike walked in at that moment, his face lighting up when he saw Sarah. "What's going on here?" he asked, his eyes darting between us. "Your sister is being insufferable, as usual," Sarah pouted, playing the victim. "She doesn't understand her place in this house." Mike turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Jane, can't you just try to get along with Sarah, for my sake?" I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "For your sake?" "What about me, Mike? What about what she's doing to me? How can you just stand there and let her treat me this way?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. Can't you see how much I love her? Can't you just let me be happy?" I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if my heart was breaking. "I'm your sister, Mike. I've always been there for you, supported you, loved you. And this is how you repay me, by allowing her to treat me like this." He looked down, his face flushed with shame. "I'm sorry, Jane. I didn't mean to hurt you. But she's my wife now, and I have to stand by her." "Even if it means losing me?" I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer, and I knew that I had my answer. That was the breaking point. The moment when I knew that I had lost my brother, lost my home, lost everything that had once meant so much to me. I packed my bags that night, tears streaming down my face as I realized the enormity of what had happened. I was leaving behind my past, my family, my life. As I left the house, Mike stood at the door, his face pale, his eyes filled with regret. "Jane, please don't go." "I'm so sorry." I looked at him, my heart aching. "I love you, Mike. But you've made your choice, and now I have to make mine." I walked away, my steps heavy, my soul shattered. The breaking point had come, and there was no going back. My life had changed in an instant, and I knew that I had to find the strength to move on, to rebuild, to find my own path. But no matter how far I went, I knew that the pain, the betrayal, the loss would always be with me. The breaking point had changed everything, and I was left to pick up the pieces, alone and adrift, searching for a way to heal. In the days following my departure, anger festered within me. The pain of betrayal was raw, and I knew that I couldn't simply walk away without some form of closure. I needed to make them understand the magnitude of their actions, the depth of their deceit. Revenge, once a foreign concept to me, now seemed the only path to healing. I found a small apartment and immersed myself in work, my mind constantly replaying the events that had led me here. The taunts, the lies, the abandonment. They all fueled a fire within me, a fire that demanded justice. The day of my revenge arrived, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I invited Sarah and Mike to dinner, a final farewell, a chance to make amends. They accepted, their curiosity piqued, no doubt expecting me to beg for forgiveness or plead for reconciliation. They arrived at my apartment, Sarah dressed to the nines, her eyes assessing everything with a critical eye. Mike looked uncomfortable, his eyes avoiding mine, a hint of guilt in his expression. "Jane, this place is quaint," Sarah said, her voice dripping with condescension. I smiled, my voice steady. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm quite happy here." We sat down to dinner, the atmosphere tense, the conversation stilted. Finally, as the main course was served, I looked at them, my eyes filled with determination. "Mike, Sarah, there's something I need to tell you," I began, my heart pounding in my chest. "Something you both need to know." Sarah's eyes narrowed, sensing that something was amiss. "What's this all about, Jane?" I took a deep breath, my voice firm. "It's about the truth, Sarah. The truth about what you both have done. The truth about the lies and the betrayal." Mike's face went pale, his eyes widening in shock. "Jane, what are you talking about?" I looked at him, my voice filled with scorn. "Don't play dumb, Mike. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You were cheating on Sarah before the wedding, and I caught you." Sarah's face went white, her eyes filled with disbelief. "What? Is this true, Mike?" Mike looked at her, his face filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Sarah." "It's true, but it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." Sarah's face twisted with rage, her voice rising. "A mistake. How dare you? And you, Jane, you knew about this and said nothing." I met her gaze, my voice cold. "Why should I have said anything? You treated me like trash, bullied me, drove me from my own home. You both made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." Sarah's face crumpled, tears in her eyes. "I cheated on you too, Mike. I never wanted you. I just wanted your money." Mike's face went ashen, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. "What? Sarah, how could you?" I watched them, my heart pounding, my revenge complete. The truth was out, and they were left to deal with the fallout. "I'm done with both of you," I said, my voice filled with finality. "You've shown me who you truly are, and I want nothing more to do with you. Goodbye." I walked away, leaving them in stunned silence, the weight of their betrayal hanging heavy in the air. My revenge was unleashed, and I felt a sense of satisfaction, a sense of justice. But as the days wore on, the emptiness remained, the pain still raw. Weeks turned into months, and the dust began to settle. My revenge, while satisfying at the moment, had not brought the peace I had hoped for. The anger and betrayal still gnawed at me, but a small voice within urged me to move on, to find a new path, to rebuild. I threw myself into my work and began to explore new interests. The world seemed full of possibilities, and I was determined to make the most of it. Slowly, I began to heal, to find joy in life again.